This is the third Photo Tuesday for Alaska Photographic Center. The last of the season for us before we gear up for rarefied light activities, which are already started. The call is open on Cafe for all Alaskan artists. And I've been asked about that. Do you need to still reside in Alaska? And right now that's the situation. So anyway, go to Cafe, callforentry.org and submit your entries. And we'll have to visit the folks that have left us that still join us for our activities, whether they're eligible for rarefied light. Eddie Soloway is going to be our juror this year, and he is coming to Anchorage for a live workshop. That's going to be, first of all, the public lecture on August 5th. And we will, even if it's in person, we will be Zooming this for those of you that aren't in the immediate Anchorage area. And then the 6th in the evening and the 7th and 8th all day will be the workshop with Eddie. So more of that to come on our website, so you can sign up. We're just getting that on now this week. So check that out. And then anything else announcement wise that I missed? Okay, well, welcome and thank you, Deb, for rescheduling with us. Deb Schildt is here. She has a 30-year career in the film industry. She resides in Anchorage, studios in Anchorage, but she travels a lot. I'm always seeing that you're gallivanting around filming. So working behind the scenes has given her a unique perspective on capturing story. And her experiences in the field have shaped her life storyboard. So she's going to share that with us tonight. Photographs, film clips in her presentation, Breaking the Fourth Wall, the stories behind the storyboards. So thank you so much, Deb, and we appreciate this presentation.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank APC for giving me the opportunity to present, and I want to thank everybody here that's joining us tonight. I welcome your questions and comments, but I'll ask that you just hold those questions until the end of the presentation, which should be about 25 minutes. I've always been a storyteller. Of course, all of us are. It's how we teach, it's how we learn, it's how we remember things. I started taking photographs as a child. I got my first camera, I guess, around 12 years old. It was an old Zeiss Icon. My father gave me his light meter and helped me set up a small dark room and enlarger in our basement in Minnesota. And that got me started looking deeper at things. I ended up in art school in British Columbia, and that really put my film career into motion. My first film camera was a hand crank 16mm Bolex. After film school, I was off to Hollywood. I went there and spent 8 years working on features, docs, commercials, still photo shoots. I ended up really on large feature films. This is on the set of My Girl. And I soon realized that it was the experience of making the film that was really as important to me as the final product, that actually brought meaning into my life. A lot of those films I worked on were studio pictures with big budget crews, all of us working behind the scenes to help bring the fantasy world to life. In film and in theater, the fourth wall is an imaginary wall that separates the story from the real world. That invisible fourth wall is the screen that we're watching through. But what if that veil lifted? What would be revealed? This is on the set of Chattahoochee. It's Gary Oldman and myself. On a set that's dated into the 1950s, and we're looking past that fourth wall and into present day. Well, after 32 films, I realized that I wanted out, way out. I was tired of men in expensive Italian loafers who couldn't change a light bulb. I wanted my life to be more about life than work. So I left 10 million people behind me in Los Angeles, and maybe an end to my film career. And I headed to the furthest north place I could think of. I headed north to Alaska. I'm going to show you 8 projects tonight behind the scenes and what it took to bring those storyboards to life. We're going to start with Frontier Azul. This is a feature film that shot around the world and also here in Alaska. We got a call from a production company in Peru, and they were looking to shoot a portion of their feature film here in Alaska. So that's really how this story begins. This is a trailer for the film, short trailer.
Atka, nitahngak ka. Nichuhngatun ka. Ay pag nitungsan ka pakilhoy hunahkan ka. Neput. Nang tput. Tingka. Damaskuita. Wangen ik umjaken rechter. Wanguta damam ta yuluta jiu mochtukut.
Mochtukut, Charlie.
Atka, dang hochtukut ka.
So, what did it take to shoot the Alaska portion of Frontier Azul? Well, it started with storyboards and treatments. The storyboard is for filmmaking a collaborative piece of pulling everyone together. It's how we all get an impression of the action, the effects, the locations, the sets, the shots, the talent that are going to needed to bring the project to life. So in the case of Frontier Azul, we started with the scouting, and we landed eventually on locations in Talkeetna, Lake George, and Blackstone Bay out in Prince William Sound. As soon as that was over, we started with the casting. I auditioned about 30 men and women for the lead roles of Aga and Atka. Teresa Babcock from Wasilla, who had no acting experience, ended up with the role of Aga. And Ishmael Hope from Juneau got the male lead of Atka. So Frontier Azul is about an Inuit woman, Aga, who is hovering on her deathbed. She ends up leaving her home and wandering, and there's always lots of rushing and waiting on the set. There are lots of opportunities to take pictures of the action and crew while the story is being filmed. We kind of journey through the lives of, we journey with Aga through the lives of others around the globe who kind of hang on that edge of life and death, all of them linked emotionally to each other and the oceans that connect them. This is the film's director while he's filming the home, Aga and Atka's home, being burned. We also used Iditarod Musher Nick Pettit as our dog wrangler and handler, and he's watching on the set right here. The film's producer, Raphael, is helping here set up a shot in Blackstone Bay. So in shooting in Blackstone Bay, our lead actor, Ishmael, really wasn't comfortable with a kayak. So we used a landing craft, which we frequently use as a camera platform, because if the water's flat, we can lay the deck down and the camera can be right on the deck, right on the water for shooting. Since Ishmael wasn't a kayaker, we stabilized the kayak on both ends with poles attached to the kayak stern and bow that men held on the landing craft. On the wider shots, we use a stunt double. In this case, it was Asi Kararyak. He was our stunt double because he was very comfortable in a kayak. And so he put on Atka's wardrobe and set off across Blackstone Bay. For the wide shots, a drone follows him out into the bay. And you can see the drone just hovering above him off to the right. By that day's end, Asi pulled out his drum, his skin drum. He's a skin drum maker and a wonderful musician. And he played for us and sang for us on the way back into Whittier. So that's it was a great experience making that film and working with the Peruvian film crew. We all got to be family, and that's kind of what happens on film sets. You share that creative energy together and you become family. Next, I'm going to look at a spot that we shot for American Express. It's a TV commercial with photographer Paul Nickland. In the commercial, Paul seems to take a solitary journey through Alaska. However, it was all very well planned out, shot over several days with a large film crew and an ad agency in tow wherever Paul went. The storyboards for that commercial looked something like this. There's a lot of room in there for interpretation, and so that's what we did. We brought that storyboard to life. We started out at the Wildlife Conservation Center with the owner and animal wrangler, Mike Miller, inside the fence with his assistant, Paul, with his assistant, and Paul with his lenses and a bear. The camera was behind Paul, and the remaining crew and agency sat well outside the fence. We got that shot that's in the commercial of the bear standing up. It took about an hour. Once the bear stood up, we got that shot and the bear promptly sat back down. We finished that shoot and went off to the next scene at Portage Lake, where we filmed Paul paddling across the lake. Then we went on to Virgin Falls. It looks like a solitary scenic campsite, but what it took to create it was a huge film crew. That's Lauren Holmes, our set photographer, off in the left-hand corner of the frame. And besides the film crew down in the water helping to set up the shot, there was a large, what we call video village tucked into the woods, making sure they got all the shots they needed to complete the storyboard. Once we got that shot, we headed back to Anchorage. Paul hopped on a plane and was filmed as he flew out to Talkeetna. Greg Kern is our gaffer, and he's adjusting a lighting setup for the cafe shot at the Fairview Inn in Talkeetna, which is supposed to just look naturally lit, but it probably took Greg about 4 hours to get it to look so natural. And this is how it turned out.
Alaska, finally, the search for brown bears begins. Denali Highway, low on gas, pit stop, fill up, double points. Yep, that's cold, tired. Day 2, coffee, eggs, double points. Beautiful, majestic, nothing. Where are you, bear? Warm, warmer, warmer? Yes.
Wherever the journey takes you, carry American Express Gold. It's more than a card. It's the gear that gets it done.
So then I'd like to talk just a little bit about Big Miracle, or Everybody Loves Whales. This was the largest feature to ever shoot in Alaska. I worked on it from May to December. Of course, it starred Drew Barrymore and John Kaczynski, but the real stars to me were the Alaskans. Amalgam Sweeney and John Pingayak landed leading roles in that picture, but beyond their roles, there were polar bear guards, there were reporters, there were over 3,000 Alaskans that I auditioned from May to September, spread across Utqiagvik, Kotzebue, Nome, Fairbanks, Bethel, Anchorage, Palmer-Wasilla. I auditioned at the State Fair, Homer, Juneau, and Sitka. 1,500 of the 3,000 I auditioned actually made it into the film. We had a map of the state in our cast holding area, and the cast marked their hometowns out on that map, and they truly did come from across the state. When I was auditioning in Utqiagvik, it was Nulukatuck time. So there were celebrations going on that had to do with the Spring Whaling Festival there, among them blanket toss events. Utqiagvik is just one of my favorite places in Alaska to visit and to shoot. I feel really fortunate to have been able to spend time there on multiple projects. There's always stuff to discover. Over a 5-year period, I worked with Lourdes Grobet. She's an internationally acclaimed photographer from Mexico. She had a documentary project called Bearing Equilibrium and Resistance. We shot in Wales, Alaska, and across the Bering Strait on Little Diomede Island. So crossing to Little Diomede, we crossed the ice pack. And the ice pack is just a visual nirvana for me. I don't ever tire of the texture and the patterns of the ice. This is approaching from the backside of Little Diomede in late November. The helicopter brings you around and you get your full-on view of the village of 65 residents. No running water, 2 stores, 1 school, and 1 power plant run by a man who calls himself Special Ed. This is Special Ed. He's returning from a morning walrus hunt. And this is the morning hunt of the walrus hunters going out. This is Ed's brother. He runs the main grocery store in town, and he's also a self-proclaimed border patrol. The children followed us everywhere we went. This is Marcus. He was always tagging along behind us and showing up at our door, knocking and saying, "Can I come visit?" This is Natalie, his sister, and their cousin. The children were really fascinated by this film crew from Mexico. This is sunset looking towards Big Diomede on the helipad. When we finished in Diomede, we headed over to Wales and filmed there. This is Lourdes with Lucy Kitchen's mother at a dinner that we had in Wales, where we enjoyed dried black seal meat with Lucy's favorite jalapeno peppers. This is the minister in Wales. And this is his home on the south end of town. I really liked the inside of his Arctic entry. I like seeing how village life demands frugality and using resources wisely. In this case, driftwood he's collected dries his plastic bags, and an old sock fixes his entryway broom. This is a sign on a door in Wales that's next to the beach, and there was a bucket of water at the base of the door so you could rinse the sand off your boots and keep it out of the house. Wales is the westernmost city within mainland United States with a long, long history. An ancient burial site was discovered here that dates back to 500 AD. At the turn of the 20th century, it was a prosperous whaling center with over 500 residents, but today it's only about 150. The flu pandemic of 1918 wiped out many of Wales' residents. In 1918, Alaska natives made up about 48% of Alaska's population. 8% of them died in the pandemic, most of them from this region. Shallow graves still speak of that history. This is a pair of whale vertebrae and some driftwood along a beach down in Wales. And this is the trailer.
Oh, there's a light. There's a house. And then there's a house like that. And there's a house like there. Because I know why they make the houses. Because they're watching us. They're watching us.
It's the border between America and Russia, right out there. It's an imaginary line. Long ago, we had relatives from that other side of that line. I think it was unfair. They sold us. I think it was not quite right. America bought us. You know, they had a civil war before that, saying you can't be, buying people. And it's basically the same thing. They bought the whole race of people.
Now that the passage to the Arctic Ocean and going further up north is opening up due to the fact the ice is receding, it's melting and whatnot. That's why we have all of these ships that are coming, wanting to come up to this area, to the Bering Strait. Yeah, they're trying to make us live the way how the future is going to be. They're trying to put a lot of regulation. But we say no.
We might look like Eskimos. We'll probably be looking like Eskimos for years. But our native language will be English. Same thing probably over there. Your language probably Russian.
The next 5 years, I think, is going to be a big change for Diamond. Big change for Diamond.
So next, in 2015, I get this call from a production company, Electus Films in Los Angeles, and they wanted me to be their location scout, location manager, and permit a national park in Alaska in under 7 days. That seemed pretty impossible to me, but I wanted to learn more. They assured me I'd be able to get the permit. So I signed an NDA to learn more. It turned out it was an episode of Running Wild with Bear Grylls. And I told them I still didn't think that Bear Grylls was that special in the eyes of the National Park Service. And they said, oh, no. In this case, they would still get me the permit in under 5 days due to his special guest. And I said, well, who's his special guest? I knew that Michelle Obama had just been a spokesperson for the National Park Service, and I thought maybe it could be Michelle Obama. And so I asked if it was, and they said, no, it's actually someone more important. I said, more important than Michelle Obama? And they said, yeah, it's Barack. So thus began a scout and a shoot that was really pretty unique for any of the shoots that I'd been on up to that point. It was the first time I was scouting by committee. So I was out scouting, but alongside me were film crew, the Park Service, and the Secret Service. Their location of choice ended up being the toe of the Index Glacier because they wanted to have a discussion. President Obama wanted to have a discussion with Bear Grylls about climate change. So that seemed an appropriate meeting place. Well, we scouted, we established how it would play out. There were meetings upon meetings upon meetings, playing out all the possible contingencies and the scenarios and the what ifs. And it all came to fruition in just a few hours of shooting at the toe of the Index Glacier. And in the end, we were all told that we couldn't touch the president, but it was hard not to put an arm around him when he put his arm around you. He was a wonderful man to work with. Next, I'm going to talk just a little bit about an international hybrid documentary on Tommy Chin, the marathon runner. I've worked with a lot of film crews from a lot of places, and it seems like we have a common thread, and that's the creative process. What I discovered on the Tommy Chen project is since 90% of the crew spoke no English, we all learned what our common language was. And there's an amazing magnetic synergy to that creative energy. When you don't speak English and you don't speak Chinese, you do a lot of planning and pre-planning with production documents. In this case, we had schedules, we had the route we thought we were going to follow, and we did an extensive recce to all of those locations. So I went out with their producer, Fish Lin, and we recce'd all the spots they thought they would want to film. This was, I think this was in February or March. So when Fish and I went up to Utqiagvik, we wanted to go to Point Barrow, the northernmost point in the United States. And we got there, but it was 50 below zero when we scouted that day. So we went out with 2 guides from the Arctic Research Center from NARL. And the way we handled the cold is that everyone dressed like this. We triple layered up. There were scenic stops along the way to and from. One of my favorites is Picnic. It's a summer fish camp area, and it's just interesting in any season. I liked the way the ice picked up on that, the ropes of the swing. We also scouted ice caves for this shoot on the Matanuska Glacier, and there were several of them this year. But the ice caves became more important than just the telling in this documentary story. They ended up being the site where the assistant cameraman proposed unexpectedly to his fiancée. Now, she had brought her wedding gown along, hoping for some kind of spectacular wedding dress shot somewhere in Alaska. She didn't know she was going to be proposed to in this ice cave, but she was, and she had her dress with her, and she got her shot. I'm going to talk briefly about another feature that I worked on in Utqiagvik for the Smithsonian Museum. It was called 1,000 Roads. Mary Kotsky was our script supervisor on that project, and we were shooting up there in early spring. It was a very tightly organized shoot, shooting in multiple countries that started in Alaska. And on our first day of shooting, Utqiagvik landed their first whale of the season. I notified production to let them know what a rare opportunity this would be to film. And the first assistant director said, we can't reschedule and shift gears on our first day of shooting. Tell Barrow they have to wait to pull that whale up on the ice. Well, they didn't. Life took over, and we ended up hustling up snow machines, getting out on the ice pack and shooting the scene. And if you look carefully, there's a sound man with a boom pole out in this photo on the left-hand side. It wasn't long after the whale was being cut up that a polar bear appeared, but the polar bear guards that were on site that day promptly shot the bear and skinned him out, and off went everything but a red spot on the ice. You know, film shoots, film production companies come here for the mystique, the wonder, the extremes of Alaska. That's probably why most of us choose to live here. I scout glaciers and ice a lot. I find it dynamic, dramatic, just delicious. I love the details. I love the light. Sometimes when you're out there looking at that ice, you spot the unexpected, like this day on the Matsu. I didn't expect to find monks on the Matsu, nor did I expect to find a little moth drying its wings on the ice. Now we're going to look at a locally produced Alaskan documentary that I worked on over the course of several years, Making Tracks. This is shooting up in Nome at White Alice. A lot of times in Alaska, when we're filming, we find unconventional means to move the cameraman around. In this case, a snow machine pulling a dog sled with the skiers behind. And here's what that trailer looks like.
Push it! Go get him, Helen!
Each one is a source of pride.
I mean, there was piles of them.
I could see the influence he had on the kids and the love.
It's cool, John.
Girls, my heroes.
This model allows forward progress in all conditions and on all terrain with ease. It also allows the skier to walk up a slope without slipping backwards.
So then along came COVID, and normal seems to be a steady adaptation, but inquiries are starting to come in, and Alaska still remains a great place to film, to explore, and call home. I'd like to thank all of you for joining me on your screens, and I welcome any questions. No questions. I guess I answered them all.
Let's give it just a couple extra minutes here because I'm sure that people might be typing. Metro says, thank you, Deb. That was fantastic. You want to have a question? Don't be afraid.
Thank you, Petra.
Actually, I do have a question. I want to know what the next project is now that we are over COVID or beginning to be over the pandemic. What's happening for you?
Well, there's some really
Do you
interesting
know?
projects. Yeah, but I've signed NDAs, so I can't really talk about them. They involve ice. They involve ice. They involve climate change. They involve adaptation. Yeah, there's some really, there's some really interesting projects coming in from all over. There's a project from the UK. There's a project from Taiwan. There's a project from Pennsylvania. There's a project from California, and it's amazing. In the film business, you end up really working with the same people a lot in your career. Things kind of circle round again, and it becomes this really small world of film and
I believe that.
And so one of the projects is a director that I worked with 30 years ago, that wants to bring a project to Alaska. So it'll just be really neat to touch base again. Yeah.
Oh,
we're
wonderful.
lucky to live here. We're lucky to live here and get to travel around this state, discovering it again and again and again. And the people, when the film crew asked the whalers to stop pulling the whale on the ice, I love when life takes over. And Alaska just says, you know what, Hollywood, not today. We've got more important things to do. That's really one of my favorite parts of living here, is you get to be a part of that. Anyone else?
The piece on Little Diomede, I thought that was just stunning.
It's a remarkable, unique place to film, and I've been fortunate enough to go there 3 times now. I also took a film crew from Morocco there. We're doing a project where a swimmer was swimming between the continents of the world, and that was really fascinating. It's always fascinating to
Yeah. It was fun.
Like
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dennis?
Yeah, I have a question. That's really remarkable images you showed. And I guess I'm thinking I have no experience in film whatsoever and only doing still photography, but I thought about, with all of your work and thinking through storyboards, and sort of telling that story, do you have some advice for still photographers?
Well, when I started studying film 30 years ago, it was studying it frame by frame. And so really photographers are telling stories too in that single frame. Just think about story when you're taking that shot. That's the only advice I have. Because I think that's what we're looking for, is that connection, connecting with the audience, connecting with the person that's looking at that photograph. Do they feel a mood? Does it stir something in them? Do they find the humanity in it that we share? Those are the things that are great about artistic communication. That's what I really liked about working with the Taiwanese crew, that none of us, I didn't speak Chinese and they didn't speak English, but we would drive around looking at places together, playing soundtracks. We shared soundtracks and found mood and found our shots without ever needing to speak a word.
Good thoughts. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Are any of these movies available through streaming? I'm just wondering how we could get to see some of them.
I think Frontera Azul is now on Amazon.
Okay.
That director was trying to do a screening in Juneau and COVID hit and they closed the theater down, and he's still trying to bring the film. He wants to bring it to Alaska to play here. So hopefully as COVID opens up, that will be able to happen. Equilibrium and Resistance, I know that Lourdes screened it in Paris at an exhibition in Paris. So it may be online now. That's been a couple of years since her exhibition in Paris. The others, well, the commercials are on the internet. Making Tracks just got picked up for distribution with a French company, and I believe it's going to be available for screening probably next month. The director-producer, Robin Cornfield, could certainly tell you about that, and she's based right here in Anchorage, so you could reach out. Yeah, and Tommy Chin's documentary, I haven't been able to see myself. They were just finishing it up when COVID started, so it's been kind of a restriction.
Interesting, thanks.
No one else? Jason, did anyone type in something that I can't see?
No, other than Bonnie saying that it's very exciting, sounds very exciting. So there's no more questions. Bonnie, you want to close it out? Do you have any other announcements?
I don't, but the questions were great that we had. So thank everybody for contributing and coming tonight. And I don't think I said that the deadline for entries to Rarefied is June 28th. So get your stuff ready. And thanks again, Deb. Really, really great presentation.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Get out there and enjoy this weather.
Enjoy that light. Yes. Nice to see everyone.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.